So my name's Sean Begott. I am one of the founders for a company called Masterful, where I'm the CEO. We're a seed-funded company in the Web3 space. We're funded by top-tier VCs like Hashed and Delphi. Essentially, what we do is we partner with world-class creators, collectives, and IP owners to build media models for this new digital world that we're entering. A little bit about my background. I've been in crypto since 2016, so I've been through the last two bear markets and bull runs. And the last bear market, I flew out to Korea to try to build out a decentralized exchange with some friends, which was partly funded through a small grant by 0x. And that's really where I started to catch the bug to be a part of the space as a builder. I realized DeFi wasn't going to be my thing. But it was incredible kind of participating in such an awesome ecosystem with some incredibly bright folks who had such a high level of conviction and were just building some of the coolest stuff I'd ever seen. So in terms of like how I got into Masterful and NFTs, a couple years ago, our co-founder and chief creative officer, Aya Nong, she created a website called Girls Club Asia. It won the Webby Award for Best Online Community, beating out Twitch and Stacked Overflow. It's essentially an incredibly well-curated publication or community of very high caliber female Asian creatives. And the goal was really to show what does it look like to be a creator who's female and that's high caliber. And that's where we really had a conversation in terms of like, how do you really add an NFT model into something like this? Because some of the other business models we weren't so excited about. So we started talking to those creators. We started talking to people in the media industry. We did a lot more research into NFTs, and this is really towards the end of DeFi summer and the initial rush of the NFT boom. And we started to ask ourselves, like, what are NFTs going to look like in 4 to 5 years? Because even though it's catching steam today, we definitely don't think it's going to look what it looks like today is going to be what it's going to look like when it's massively adopted. And then we started asking ourselves, like, what are the technologies that need to be built to service those needs? What are the operational playbooks that need to be implemented? What are some of the legal structures that need to be built out as well? And then we competed in the ETH Denver hackathon. We ended up winning 4th place for one of our innovations called Open DRM, which is a decentralized form of DRM we're launching later this year. It means that only the owner of the NFT can see the associated media. When they sell or transfer it, it goes with it. And then we raised our round, started building out this full suite of products, and now we're launching our first joint venture called Globotron, with the project being Bebots with Seth Green, Mike McGinnis, an executive producer at Radar Films, which did the Wheel of Time and Jumanji and a bunch of other properties, and Ben Balvans, who's the creative director, and the creator of Fonalicious, a pretty famous font website from about 20 years ago, where a lot of this IP started. So yeah, a little bit of background of myself, a little bit of background of Masterfile, a little bit of background of the Bebots. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Seth's a really, really talented creator. He's had over 40 years of experience on all sides of the camera. And for us, when we do joint ventures, we take a very high conviction approach. We've had a lot of offers to partner with a whole slew of different celebrities and influencers. Really, the things that we look for is twofold. Is this person a builder? Is this person a creator? Are they going to put the work into what's needed, whether or not we're in a bull market or a bear market? What are they interested in Web3 for? And probably most importantly, does this person have the ability to build entertainment IP that people A, want to watch and consume, and B, ultimately want to purchase? And Seth kind of knocked it out of the park with all 3 of those. So, if we go through the checklist, he is actively involved in NFTs. As a buyer, he buys things because he loves them. He sees this space as early Comic-Con. When he buys a collection, he gets actively involved with the community as much as possible. He reaches out to the creators, he talks to them. He's got some really great relationships across top tier projects with people who've built them. His NFT collection is pretty outstanding in itself. And when you talk to him about it, it's not because the line goes up. It's because he really sees a future in those projects. He loves them. It has an emotional relationship with it. And he really represents what it looks like to be a collector in this type of space for what we're looking to go into in the next couple of years. B, he's not only been in front of the camera, he's been behind it. He's the creator of Robot Chicken, which is now, I think, in its 12th or 13th season. It's the longest running show on Adult Swim. And he's the co-founder of Stupid Buddy Studios, which is the studio we also partnered with on the trailer and some other work. Incredible team. They build some amazing content for any channel or streaming service you can think of. So, Seth really knocked it out of the park on everything we were looking for. And the way the relationship started was Mike is a mutual friend. He reached out to us. He said, hey, we've been getting into NFTs. We've got an idea for an IP that Ben has been building. What does it look like to sell enough NFTs to make a TV show? Masterful took that understanding. We did a lot of research. We came back and we were like, there are some projects that are trying to raise enough money to do a TV show. Some of them are doing it. In our opinion, based off of how that industry works, it doesn't make a lot of sense. When you pre-build a TV show before you have a buyer, you don't have a lot of leverage in those negotiations. And there's not too many buyers that will buy a TV show. So it seems like a really bad business decision to pre-build that with non-dilutive funding. And at the end of the day, TV studios and movie studios don't buy TVs and shows and movies. They invest in IP with the goal to take over the IP itself or the most lucrative assets of that IP, like merchandising rights and whatnot. So that's where we were like, let's take a step back. Let's maybe end up at a TV show at some point in time. But let's put the mental model of saying, what does it look like to seed an original entertainment IP using Web3 and Web2 and now CCO rails? And how can we turn this into a model that is more competitive than for a creator who's very good at what they do to go through the traditional film system? They may want to go through our system at that point. And that's really where this conversation started and how it led to us building Globotron and the Bebots and why we've designed our project the way we've designed it today.
I love that. Yeah, thanks for the story. So yeah, I guess that kind of leads us right into it. So before we get in with too many more specific questions, it's probably a good idea to go ahead and just kind of zoom out, give us a high-level overview of the project. You want to design a new media model, so I'm curious what your take is there, and then just all the specifics about Bebot. So if you could just kind of run us through the project and let us know what's going on.
Sure. So, our goal with this project isn't to build an NFT project. It's to build an entertainment IP where we've slotted in Web3 and NFT in a very elegant and intelligent way. At the end of the day, when you build an intellectual property in the entertainment sector, you're going for masses of consumers. So if this is going to work as an IP that lives partially in Web3, but also outside of it, it needs to be able to be a good IP in its own right that people will want to watch and consume content around. And then we need to figure out what are some really cool ways we can intersect Web3 with this media model. So the model we ended up settling on is what Masterful has developed as called the Rising Tide Framework. I'll go ahead and drop a tweet at the end of the call that cites the deck that we have. But if you're cool with it, I'm going to just walk through a couple slides that explains the framework. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, walk through this, and then answer any questions around how it works.
Cool. Yeah. Go ahead and if you want, you can. I see you got the screen share. Give me just 1 second here to make sure we've got recording good to go. But yeah, fantastic. Appreciate it.
Cool. So Masterful took a look at the media industry. We were like, what are the various models for how this IP has been developed into TV shows and movies? We realized that entertainment houses 30 years ago realized that they don't make TV shows and movies, they build IP. And then through more research, the model that we ended up finding very interesting and ripe for some level of disruption was the use of public domain IP and its translation into enterprise value. So using Alice in Wonderland as the prime example, in 1865, Lewis Carroll publishes his book, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Goes into the public domain in 1907, means it's no rights reserved. It means that essentially anybody can do what they want with that intellectual property. A lot of poets and playwrights built their own derivative products and plays off of it, but it wasn't really until Disney launched their infamous animated film so it started to catch a different type of fire. So Disney releases their animated film, Alice in Wonderland, in 1951, was originally actually a flop, but they re-released it 23 years later. Found a huge amount of success with it, and this was their own proprietary version of Lewis Carroll's story. they were able to capture an enormous amount of enterprise value on their version of that IP through things like brand extensions like toys and books and whatnot. They started to put it into Disneyland. They were doing reruns and spin-offs. And this is the first thing we found really interesting, was that Disney has found this model to take public domain stories, and they've always been doing this, build out their own derivative version that's proprietary, build out an incredible amount of enterprise value, and just do this on a rinse and repeat. So that was the first thing we found really interesting. We then saw them reboot it 12 years ago into the Johnny Depp live action film, and that alone is a multi-billion-dollar franchise. But the second thing we found really interesting was how other creators and other studios and other companies were like, oh, that's really interesting. And even though I can't build on top of Disney's version of this IP, I can build on top of Lewis Carroll's public domain IP. And what's been really interesting is because Disney's been so successful with their IP, it's brought so much attention to Lewis Carroll's original story. So it's really created this larger total addressable market for me to build on, where I can do whatever I want with it. And as a result, you've seen a lot of people do that. You have Spicy Horse Games, it's a Chinese game company producing Alice Madness Returns through the 2010s. You have Dan Panosian, who's a pretty phenomenal and famous comic book creator and artist and writer, partnering with Boom Comics, a major label, doing Alice Ever After. And even as recently as June of this year, you have Skybound, which is the creators of The Walking Dead and Invincible on Amazon and a whole slew of other incredible entertainment properties. They crowdfunded on Kickstarter $650,000 for them to build a board game off of their version of Lewis Carroll's IP. So this is where we're like, this is very interesting. What does it look like to use Web3, Web2, and CCO Rails to take this from an exception to a model that can be replicated going forward? And how do we take that bet with the Bebots? So Masterfile has developed what's called the Rising Tide framework, and we're implementing it with the Bebots and Globotron. The concept is that these 10K generative Bebots will be released under the Can't Be Evil CCO licenses from A16Z. Globotron operates as Disney in this scenario, and it's a model that anybody can copy. So Globotron owns the trademarks for Globotron Bebots, owns the copyright for the 5 main characters in our story, and I'm happy to show everybody the trailer if you haven't seen that right after this deck. The concept is, as Globotron continues to reinvest our revenue into our narrative stories and our products and whatnot, it should increase the enterprise value of the IP, and that should start to distill down to the CCO library of assets. That, with a announced prop house like funding pool we've developed called Tidepool, should start to attract other creators who have the ability to create really phenomenal IP to want to take a bet on building on top of this IP. And it's a really elegant framework because it's essentially a rising tide lifts all boats scenario. Whether Globotron is the company that finds product market fit and expands the fan base, the enterprise value, or a competitor comes into the ecosystem built on top of the CCO stuff and finds their own success, all that success to a certain degree distills down to the public domain IP and benefits all the fans and creators building on top of it. So again, it's a rising tide lifts all boats model. And the other thing that we're doing is on that CCO collection, we're giving Globotron a little bit of an upside for taking the initial risk, but we want to make this community owned at the end of the day. So it's kind of like a progressive decentralization model. And when it comes to the royalties, there's a little bit of a typo here, and I'll fix that. But what we're doing is in year one, all the royalties are 6% on the collection. 25% of the royalties goes back to the community treasury. 75% comes back to Globotron. Next year, it'll be 50-50. Then it'll be 25% Globotron, 75% community. And starting in year 4, all secondary royalties will always go back to the community at that point. So again, this is the rising tide lifts all boats model. It's really the framework that we're using, or the mental model, to build this out. I'm going to stop here and wait for any questions that you guys might have about this.
Fantastic. Yeah, appreciate that. It's a lot to unpack, and I do want to say just real quick, I'm doing the recording on this. Typically, we have someone else doing it, so I can't actually see guest questions. So if you guys are posting any guest questions, or if you have any questions that you want to have answered, just hold on to them until either at the end we can bring you up here to talk, or if that was the last slide, you can disregard everything that I just said. apologies. But as far as the rising tide framework, there was one question because I didn't want to get too lost in the sauce trying to follow along here. It sounds like, with the use an IP from a public domain. It sounds like, if you guys see some success and you have competition pop up that says, wow, that's a great model, we should do the same thing, and they choose to do that. You said it'll kind of rise all tides in a way that it benefits the public domain. But I'm curious how that would in any way help Globotron as a business, unless that's not the goal of what you're trying to accomplish with that framework. But that was just one thing I kind of wanted to clarify, just, benefiting public domain as a whole. Like, is there a way that ties back into you guys and empowers you more? Or is it just sort of a good deed that you're doing and sort of propping up this untapped, big pool of assets that we have sitting around?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the answer to that, it's really a two bird, one stone approach. So the reality is that in the media industry and the entertainment side of things, the majority of IP is owned by single entities who are the only ones who are incentivized to build on top of it. So if you look at the entertainment industry, whether it's games or movies or comics or whatever, you can divide that sector into two parts. There are really three parts. You have production, IP and asset management, and distribution. Production is where you take your highest risk. It is incredibly expensive to build out IP. It's where you're trying to build out your success. Nobody knows what a successful property looks like. And you're really not making any money there unless you're selling shovels to the coal miners in that model. And even then, you're not making tons of money. Where you make all of your money is in distribution. Distribution, if you have the right type of distribution mechanisms down, it's pretty much rinse and repeat, and you can make a colossal amount of money on it. And IP management is your moat. It's where you defend your properties. It's where you defend your right to distribute high quality assets into your distribution lines where you make all of your money. And distribution really comes down to distribution agreements, licensing, consumer good distribution, and all that stuff. So what this model does is say two things. A, large studios don't really take bets on original IP. It's because of how they're financed through things like slate funding and the amount of money they're taking from major institutions that economically it doesn't make sense. They're always going to continue to want to exploit and purchase vetted IP that has a market base that they can continue to grow. But for people who want to create original IP, Web3 becomes this incredible ecosystem where with the right types of models, they can access non-dilutive funding, they can seed their original treasury and early fan base, and then basically have the right to blow up that IP in the best way possible while they're owning all of their rights. So the reason this model is two birds, one stone is, yes, it is doing right for public domain and for creators to come in and build on top of it. But for Globotron, it means that we don't have to go raise some very unfair and ridiculous amount of money to exploit the IP. We can do it with a more limited amount of money, own the entire rights to it, and continue to build this up and grow it on our own terms going forward. And if we do get to the point that we have a sizable following, and we're in the talks with Warner or Sony to do a TV show, we can always say no to a bad deal. We've got a revenue generating business at that point. We have our own fans. We're building our own content. And we're doing it with experts that know how to do this. And we can always wait till the right deal comes on the table at that point. And the fact that this becomes replicable at scale means that hopefully we can turn this into a model that makes the media industry a little bit more equitable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I appreciate that. Kind of related to that. So, distribution's where you're going to make your money at. And obviously, if somebody wants to be a part owner or an investor in your company, they're going to want you guys to make money, right? So let's talk about that. If you could maybe touch on some of your distribution channels, if possible, or just funding in general. Is this Mint how you plan to receive the bulk of your funding? Will there be more Mints in the future, or do you guys already have capital secured and this is extra measure? Like, how's your runway and what does your distribution look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me pull up the slide really quickly.
This man's got slides. I love it.
It's our thing. All right. So, can you guys see my screen? Perfect. So after capital expenses are repaid, because we have spent a significant amount of money building this out in the last 11 months, the founders are only taking 17.5% of the remaining primary sales. We're really not making much money. This is definitely not something we're doing for income. The remaining treasury, 41.25, goes to Globotron for us to continue to reinvest into the IP in our own vision. The remaining 41.25% goes into the Nouns Tide Pool creator economy system that we have. That means that if you own a Bebot, just like Nouns Prop House, you'll be able to go into Tide Pool and you'll be able to vote on proposals that you like that creators from all around the world are submitting and have an impact on how this IP gets developed. So this, in our opinion, gives us enough money to seed both treasuries, basically liquidate both treasuries in a year and see if we can build some really cool content, both through the community and through Globotron's vision. And then at the end of it, see if we actually have something that is scaling both revenue-wise through a variety of different digital merchandise and physical merchandise lines, as well as, maybe if we need to, go ahead and raise money at that point again, whether it's a crypto native round or a non-crypto native round. Did I answer your question?
It does, yeah. It raises a couple more, if that's okay. Do you mind?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm not trying to, over pry or anything. And if you can't answer those
Yeah,
questions,
please
that's
do.
fine.
That's the whole purpose of it.
Cool, awesome. All right, so there's a pretty big asterisk there. All of that is after capital expenses are paid. So I'm curious, is there any, public documentation about how much expenses you guys are looking at already, or is that not public information?
It's not public information yet. We may make that public, but it's nothing significant. It's anywhere between $40,000 and $80,000, depending on how the accounting comes back after the mint.
Gotcha. Okay. The next question would be 2,100 in a treasury. That's a big number. It just seems like a big number. It's my knee-jerk reaction. So could you maybe talk on the 2,100 a bit and just kind of what your vision is to do with those?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's really more about optionality at this point. Again, if you look at our team and the way we have approached things, it's very thought out. We're all docs. We all have reputations that we have to protect, so we can't do rug pulls. It's just not worth it to us. I can't do that as the CEO of this company. Seth can't do it for his reputation. Neither can Mike, and neither can Ben. So what 2101 gets us, and the reason it's a 10,101 collection is because it's binary, 10101, so it's on theme. It gives us optionality for either using that for future use cases for things like increasing liquidity for both pools. We also have some other options, which is we'd like to start inviting media executives and whatnot who want to participate in the ecosystem to do so. So we have a couple ideas in mind, maybe we invite a couple executives from around the world in each quarter. We delegate the Bebot to them, and if they succeed in participating in the community and voting and participating in social stuff, then we will gift them the Bebot at that point. That's A. B, anybody can use Tide Pool and basically apply for funding. So one of the things that we want to do is when you apply for funding and you get it, that's great. But if you deliver on your promise, then we will give you a Bebot and welcome you into the community at that point. So and then as far as liquidity goes, there's a couple different options. We can explore something like a daily auction model, like what Nouns has. Maybe we explore something like a pseudo swap option at that point and create a liquidity pool that starts to create an ongoing revenue model for both the community treasury and the Globotron treasury. But again, a lot of this is just to increase optionality so we can respond to the market where it's at based off what the needs are for both Globotron and the community.
That makes a lot of sense. Cool. Just quick reminder to everyone that's listening here live. If you have questions, feel free to drop those in office hours chat. We'll get those answered for you. That pretty much knocks out most of the, technical questions that I had. So I guess we can kind of pivot and talk about just some more fun stuff, the interesting stuff. That you said, when designing, when coming up with this whole concept, it seems like, a core idea was that, how do you make people want to watch something? And that was one of the things you mentioned. So I'm curious what your all's approach to solve that problem was and just kind of how you plan to make it different or interesting to just try and captivate people to watch the stuff that you guys are creating.
Yeah, it's a good question. So the first thing I'm going to do is in the office hours chat, I just dropped our website. The trailer is there. It's only a minute. So feel free, everybody on the call, to just watch it and check it out for a minute as I speak. And then also at the top right-hand corner of that website, when you click Discover the Bebots, it takes you to the Bebots website. So our goal here is to build out an IP that people will actually watch. Partnering with Seth and Stupid Buddy Studios, there's people who've been able to do this not only once, but many, many times over successfully for all sorts of studios and their own properties. We spent a decent amount of time, money, and energy sitting in writers' rooms, doing workshops, talking to a lot of different creators and whatnot, hiring in writers from shows that you guys know, to make sure we're first and foremost building an IP that people want. The IP does not talk about Web3, does not talk about NFTs. If you watch the trailer, it's just a really wholesome, awesome set of characters and world and narrative that's fun on its own right. It's something that's designed that can be sold to an Adult Swim or a Cartoon Network or a Fox. So we started with that. We're really proud with what we came out with. And then we started to focus on NFTs at that point. So, we did spend a decent amount of time just going through the traditional entertainment production framework of building what looks like a good TV show and IP.
A good approach. And then you had also kind of touched on the open DRM thing. Now, if you want, we can get nerdy. I'm not a super technical person, but I am interested just in the concept of how you token gate media and how you approach that. Because I mean, in traditional media, it's so easy to pirate everything. So how is this any different, and how can you kind of smooth out and make that process easy for token gated content?
Sure. So this is a longer conversation, and this is more specific to Masterfile, the company I'm one of the co-founders and CEO in. I'm happy to dive into some of this stuff, but if this is something you guys want to go into a longer conversation in, it's probably something that's worthwhile to maybe set up another AMA when we launch.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
But what I will say is Globotron's the first company to secure a license to Masterfile's technology. Masterfile does not sell this as a software as a service. We offer this as an in-kind investment into companies we partner with on joint ventures. I will show you an example of a Masterfile collectible that we have. So if you guys have watched the trailer, one of the really talented folks we hired was a artist on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And he created a whole bunch of the designs in the trailer, including a lot of the backgrounds. So if you collect all 5 Bebots, we're going to do a series of different airdrops. This is a Masterfile digital art piece. It's inside of a viewer. We build viewers for different types of mediums. We have one for comic books. We have ones coming out for music and TV, movies and whatnot. But one of the things we'll do is airdrop a really awesome collection of the different background art that was in our trailer. In our viewer, you can full screen, bit to screen, etc. Zoom in, zoom out, pan around. Anything you would expect in a typical image viewer, but in a really nice package. But also, because this was created in Adobe Photoshop, we include a little layers so you can actually see how it's put together from a skill and technique point of view. So I can deactivate these layers, I can zoom in and see it. Just adds a lot more of a collectible experience to the art that you've purchased. Then we're also attaching for these collectibles the actual rough storyboards we created for the actual trailer, so you can see how it started from a concept into an actual real thing.
Love that. Love storyboards.
Yeah, no, it's great. We're really excited about this. But this collectible tells a whole story. It's not just a JPEG. And then you also get the information page, which tells you about royalty splits and the customizable metadata. But this experience is built to be pleasurable for both non-crypto native and crypto native folks alike. So OpenDRM is our approach to decentralized digital rights management. It's built on top of a protocol that is fully decentralized by some expert cryptographers. And basically what happens is when we combine OpenDRM with master files, it means that when you purchase a master file or you get one airdrop to you, you have this unencrypted thumbnail that is shown on OpenSea or Instagram or any of these other platforms that integrate with NFTs. But in order to see the layers, the high resolution image, all of the attachments, you have to actually own the NFT. And then when you sell or transfer that NFT or master file, the ability to see it goes with it. So OpenDRM will progressively decentralize. It will also be interoperable. And Masterfile is the first company to basically A, be launching this, and B, directly integrate with it. And it'll integrate directly into our entire product suite. So you brought up something interesting, which is like, how do you fend off piracy? Piracy isn't something you can solve. What you can do is decrease the desire to pirate stuff. So NFTs offer this really great experience to do so. The way that we're decreasing the rate of piracy with OpenDRM is making it harder to pirate. So all of these media assets are stored on Arweave, but when they get stored in Arweave with OpenDRM, they're encrypted. So it's hard to actually break through that. But even if somebody buys a master file and they have access to the images and they start to screenshot it and upload it somewhere, I mean, that's fine. But the user experience of going to a pirate website and downloading images is kind of garbage. And if you look at like what Netflix and Steam did about 15 years ago, their theory was that people want to consume this content online. And if they get a much better user experience, people will happily pay for it. And they've been right at that point. So that's exactly what we're doing with our viewer system. And three, the interoperability you get with NFTs means that you can use it as a content pass. We can say, hey, if you own this comic, it gets you access to this physical or digital event. It gets you access to this community that all these other holders have as well. So there's an actual reason to own the NFT at that point for multiple reasons when you do it through Masterfile.
And just to clarify real quick, that's really, really cool. Thank you for the demonstration. So the media, the show, the movie that's coming out through Globotron, is this going to be something that's token gated behind this type of system, or is that something that everyone will be able to see and you don't have to be a holder to experience?
Yeah, that's a question. So we actually don't know if we're doing a movie or TV show at this point. We decided to do a trailer because it's the best way to engage people very quickly into the lore, the characters, and the stories that we're building. The goal is to build out a strong fan base over the course of the next 18 months by investing in high quality but affordably cost media touch points, and then basically garner a fan base through the attention economy through our own media channels like our social media accounts. So for example, we've hired Lars Kenseth. He is a New Yorker comic artist. Like every third comic in the New Yorker is his. He's incredibly talented. He's also been a TV writer on things like the Chuck Deuce show on Adult Swim. The Norm Macdonald has a show on Netflix and a bunch of other ones as well. So we've engaged him, and this is again one of the capital expenses, to do 52 Saturday morning cartoons for the next year. We already have a bunch of them published. They're really funny and really cute. But these are the types of touch points that we'll be investing in for the first year, is trying to address the attention economy, get content out there that's as high quality as possible across all of our own media channels, build up a fan base, hopefully introduce some of those to the cool NFTs that we have. But then from there, use the relationships that Masterfile has, that Seth has, that SBS has, that Mike has, to then, with a proper sized fan base that's growing, with the numbers to show for it, with a proper direct to consumer set of revenue streams, then go to sell this as a TV show and enter growth mode for the IP.
Gotcha. Sounds like a good plan of attack. Anything else to elaborate on there? Can we kind of move on to the next talking point?
Yeah, no, I think that's it on my side. Unless
Okay.
anybody else has any questions.
Cool. We do actually have one question here. Will the community have any say in the direction of the show? So is that a part of the utility to influence, story or anything like that?
Not for Globotron. It's not a model we're very bullish on, to be honest. I think there may be a demand somewhere in the ecosystem for this community-based, choose-your-own-adventure type of solution. It's not a bet that we're making. In our experience with crypto, voting feels like work for most people, and it's very hard to scale that to consumers. And even choose-your-own-adventure animations are incredibly expensive. Hasn't worked yet, especially when you look at large distribution projects with Bandersnatch. But this is the reason we're taking our CCO approach. This is the reason we're dividing a large amount of the treasury into a creator economy, because then you have the rights to build your own story, the rights to build your own IP on top of it and tell whatever you want. And that's something we're really excited about.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I appreciate that take too. I mean, a lot of projects do, they try to work DAO. If they're a storytelling project, they try to work the whole voting into deciding, the story or the roadmap or whatever it may be. But you lose a lot of control when you do that. You can't really steer the ship anymore. But on the other side, you build a much stronger and more invested community that sort of feels like they did contribute to the decision. So I could see both sides, but I do understand where you're coming from. In we don't need to enable that because we're enabling this entire creator economy that can do their own thing, which I appreciate as well. So if we could, let's talk about the creator economy a little bit. One of the things you had mentioned was, applying for grants. So if you could maybe touch on that, like what is the process kind of, what do you envision it? It may not be ironed out yet, but how do you envision people, applying for these grants, the vetting process? Will the community vote on those? Just could you kind of just outline that whole process?
Yeah, for sure. So two things really quickly, since we're on the utility side of things. One, by the end of the year, Masterfile's partner Mighty, what we're doing is actually enabling motion capture on your avatar. So you'll actually be able to use your Bebot on things like Zoom and Twitch and YouTube. So there's a really cool retail aspect to purchasing these Bebots. We'll also be building out some pretty interesting Web3 interactive experiences, maybe things like interactive fiction. That really just depends on what our treasury looks like. So going to the creator economy side of things, there's really two major use cases for owning the Bebot NFT. So what we needed to address is that if we are going to CCO the actual 10K generative assets, then we need to add some other utility for people to have a reason to buy those assets. Because unlike Bored Ape Yacht Club and a bunch of the other IPs, NFTs that are out there, where it locks down the right to exploit that character to the owner of it, that's not really the case here. So we came up with a couple other creative ideas. For Noun's Prop House, Masterfile Tide Pool, which is a Noun's Prop House-like funding system, when people from all over the world submit proposals to be funded to build out their own derivatives, media projects and whatnot, only Bebot holders can vote, and it's one Bebot per vote. So as a Bebot, you get to basically have an influence on where this ecosystem grows with the type of proposals that are out there. We are planning on launching Tide Pool in early 2023. Part of what we're going to be spending the remainder of the year doing is working with people who want to apply for it, making sure they're able to develop high quality proposals, and making sure that when we launch Tide Pool early next year, there's a bunch of really cool, well thought out, really talented from all spectrums and all parts of the world, creators and studios and whatnot that are applying for that funding. So when you come in and participate, you get to basically vet some really cool projects at that point. But when it launches, anyone's going to be able to apply. So it'll be open for anybody to apply and only for Bebots to vote on. I'm going to stop there at Tide Pool and just see if anybody has any questions before I go on to the next part.
Nothing for me.
Cool. So the other thing that we decided to do was we looked at companies like Marvel and why they were purchased. And they were basically purchased because they have like over 4,000 characters and they controlled the rights in these character sheets. And each of these characters have been exploited into different comics and games and movies. So that's where we thought, okay, what would be really interesting is if the Bebots holders would be able to connect to what's called a terminal that's launching early next year. And what they can do there is establish what is canon for that character. So you establish what's the Bebot's name, what's their backstory, what's their catchphrase, what describes them, what attributes they have. And if a project uses your Bebot in it as a CCO asset, you can choose to establish that story officially as canon. But if it's not included in the canon of that character, then it doesn't officially have a stamp of approval at that point. So it's a lot more about having influence at that point and what gets built and what is official than restricting who can build on top of it.
Interesting, because anyone can just grab a Bebot. If they're CC0, anyone can grab, a collection of Bebots and make, whatever they want with it, and you can't really stop them. But it sounds like you have the choice of deciding if it's canon for your character, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. Whether or not it's official.
Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, that's new. I think the whole concept that you guys have is really profound. It's really powerful. The whole Disney model of grabbing public domain stuff and then making it into proprietary derivative is bloody brilliant. And I agree that nobody wants to fund new IPs. We would much rather just have another Marvel installation or whatever, anything that's tried and true, except for in the Web3 space. The Web3 space seems to be absolutely obsessed with discovering new IPs and investing in those, and hoping that they flourish. So it's definitely a good intersection to be for your whole business model, because everyone is kind of IP crazy. Anytime a project is on the down, it's like focus on the IP, focus on the IP, and some people can't really even envision what that means. So I think it's a refreshing take, the whole project. Let me check real quick, see if we've got any guest questions, and if anybody wants to come up here, feel free, or just unmute and fire away if you have any questions here. I'm just going to take a quick peek. Is there anything that we kind of glossed over that you kind of want to touch on while I do this?
One thing maybe. Give me 1 second.
Sure. Yeah, sorry about this, man. It's a little clunky. Normally we have somebody else doing the recording, so I can be
no
kind of
worries.
hands-free. I'm trying to juggle here. But yeah, no, do appreciate the presentation and all the details and stuff. But I just want to kind of give you the floor for a second, just so you can kind of touch on anything we may have missed or that is important.
Appreciate that. So I haven't been able to update the slides since yesterday morning. But this is our current growth after 12 days of announcing our project publicly. We started with 400 Twitter followers. We're at like 21,000 at this point, so we're well over 40x growth. We started at 400 Discord members. We're now at over 15,000. I think we're at almost 17,000 now, last time I checked. So it's over 30x growth in 12 days. Our trailer, as of yesterday morning, had 7.5 thousand retweets and 6.6 thousand likes. We've established over 150 NFT partnerships, and we're well oversubscribed on the pre-mint sign-up side of things. We're hitting a hockey stick level of growth at this point with how new we are. Our Discord channel is pretty healthy. It's gotten a lot of really great engagement. We're building out a really special community. And our Twitter account's awesome. It's not really just all giveaways. It's really engaging the community in some really fun contests, like a Dolly Guess the Prompt contest. We have these binary riddles that we do too, but it's built to be a real brand that interacts with you, that can scale. And then, if anybody's really interested in diving a little bit deeper into this, Seth and I did the Emit One podcast with G Money, who got really excited about our project after we spoke with him, and secured a bunch of spots for Emit One. And then me and Seth, as well as Chris Waters, the head of development at Stupid Buddy Studios, also did the Delphi podcast a couple weeks ago. Definitely encourage everybody to check those out if you have more interest in what we're doing and how either the rising tide model plays into things or what the general approach is for Bebots and Globotron.
Very cool. Yeah, and thanks for sharing. Usually people don't share their growth metrics. It's nice to see the hockey stick growth. It looks like you opened up a giveaway account or something. So that's impressive, man. If you've got genuine engagements and interactions on that, that's pretty cool. And on top of that, you're experiencing this rapid growth, and you're still scheduling nonstop AMAs and working with people on their schedules and stuff. So kudos to you, man. That's good. You love to see it. And then, you had also mentioned really early on, you mentioned like one of the questions is like, will people continue to build in the bear? And if you've been here since 2016, then you've, experienced your fair share of bears and you're still here. So yeah, props to you, man. You love to see it.
No, I appreciate it. It's like I said, this is one of the coolest spaces we've ever seen. It's super exciting to continue to grow. It's awesome that we get to build some really awesome, substantial stuff with people like Seth Green. And I'd say the last thing I'm going to say about that is on our website, we've got a page that just talks about our ethos. It breaks down into really three things because we have a very high conviction in this space. It's don't be greedy. We talk about how we're dedicating most of the revenue as non-dilutive funding into the IP and building out a creator economy. We want people to have an unfettered amount of creativity inside the system. B, community-wise, the code is just be a buddy and help out as much as possible. We've got 10 pretty cool commandments that were created by Stupid Buddy Studios. And lastly, and I think this is really important, it really establishes Masterfile's approach to building this ecosystem is rather than move fast and break things, which is catastrophic in Web3, it's really going to be more about be thoughtful and build value. And I think everything that we're doing with Bebots and all the other projects and software that we're building, really this emanates through that.
I love that. I was going to read off one of the things, but you killed the screen. But yeah, I love your commandments, man. Those are cool.
Yeah, it's a Stupid Buddy thing that we really loved, so we decided to adopt into the ecosystem and cite them on it.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, if we've got any guest questions again, we can knock those out now. That pretty much answered all the questions that I had. It's it's a really, again, it's an interesting new kind of take on this. So be excited to see how everything shakes out. I guess we could go ahead and move into mint details if you want to let us know when the mint is, if it's whitelist only, or how we could pursue whitelist at this point if we did want to get involved. Just kind of give us some details on what to expect for mint day.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, it's a 10,101 collection. It'll be 8,000 available to purchase or mint. Allow list mint starts on next Wednesday, September 28th. Public mint will be September 30th. And then the reveals will scale from that evening at 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. We have three different reveals. And we have basically three different types of really cool loot box animations depending on what type of Bebot you purchased. And then October 1st at 12 p.m. Pacific time, we're doing a mint party. All the founders of the Bebots, including Seth Green, will be there. We're also trying to invite some special guests to attend there as well. We want folks to be able to hop on stage. It'll be a video stream, share their screen, open up their box, and allow everybody to kind of do a reaction video at the same time, and then shuffle more people in. So it'll be pretty fun.
Yeah, it sounds like a blast. Sounds like a good time. I'm gonna go ahead and bite though. Did you say three different reveals? What does that mean?
Yeah. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. So the bottom 80% of rarity Bebots will be available for reveal at 5 p.m. on September 30th. You'll be able to click on your crate and unveil it. Then next morning at 9 a.m., the next top 15% of rarity of Bebots will be available to reveal. And then finally at 12 p.m. on October 1st, the top 5% of rare Bebots will be available to reveal. So the concept here is that between tranches 1 and 2 and 2 and 3, it should help accelerate secondary sales.
Does that not sort of kill out the anticipation of buying a rare? I mean, in between stages, rather, because that. Huh, that's interesting. My brain is swirling. I'm trying to dissect that. So you'll know right away when you go to open. If you're able to open on that first day, you're like, okay, I got a common. And if you can't, you're like, okay, this is good. And then if you can't open on the next phase, you're like, here we go. That's when you start sweating a little bit. But for secondary, that's interesting. I'm curious how that's going to play out. People, I guess knowing that it's rare, yeah, because you wouldn't have been able to open it. So if it's still unveiled, then it's guaranteed rarer than the others. That's interesting. How'd you guys come up with that?
Um, we're very research heavy and thesis driven at our company. So we spend a lot of time exploring how things are done, and I think we've done a pretty good job of establishing that with how we're going about this. So we did a lot of research. We wanted to experiment really heavily on reveal mechanisms and try to find something that A, allows us to optimize for gas, but B, organically incentivizes secondary sales within a finite period of time. So this is the model that we came up with. Mike McGinnis is one of the people who helped come up with it, came up with a really cool model that was inspired by how the NBA draft works. And this is what we settled on. We're really excited to see it play out. And essentially what you said is what we think the user behavior will be. If you see on the secondary market an OpenSea or looks rare that there's still an unrevealed box, that means that it's definitely in the top 20% of rarity. And then between second and third tranche, if there's an unrevealed box on OpenSea or looks rare, that's a top 5% Bebot.
Yeah, I guess, just being active in the NFT space, I would assume you'd see a big dump, right? That first day, everyone that can open their box knows it's common, so people like to exit positions. And actually, we have a question here, guest question from Jinzo. He's asking, if the intention is to kind of drive secondary sales, why not delay reveal a bit? It sounds like the reveal is scheduled to, happen pretty quickly after the sellout, and most projects lose steam a bit after reveal, so it's kind of a juicy period, right? That pre-reveal period. Is there a reason why you guys kind of opted to expedite that and go straight into reveal after mint out?
Yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, a lot of this stuff, there's a gray area. There's not really a black and white right answer. There's a lot of different options we can choose. We felt like this would be the best way to balance out most of the outcomes that might happen here. Whether we sell out on Wednesday and there's 3 days of waiting, or if we sell it on Friday and there's 5 hours of waiting, this kind of balances as much as possible the positive outcome without knowing exactly what's going to happen.
Gotcha. That makes sense. And one other question for the unveiling process. Can you choose to keep it unrevealed if you want?
You can't, unfortunately. So, like, that's one of the things we had to do for gas optimizations. And our CTO has a really detailed thread coming out next week with some really cool animations talking exactly how we did the reveal functions. Start once it hits 12 p.m. on October 1st Pacific time, all the boxes will have been associated with an NFT. So you'll be able to see that information on the ledger at that point, and which Arweave actual like metadata it's associated with.
And then one more question that just popped into my head. If you have the option to unveil in phase one, so you know that you have, a bottom 80%, can you choose to not click that button and then just list it? And people might think, that's a rare because it hasn't been opened. Sorry if this is way too specific and like very like fine questions, but yeah, just something that popped in my head.
So, it depends on OpenSea does a collection update at that point. It should be able to show what it's associated with. As far as the ledger is concerned, it will show exactly which bot it's associated with at that point. So you won't be able to sell it just as a blank crate.
Gotcha. So you guys sort of push the metadata. You sort of reveal it for people in phases. Is that right? Or is it a button that you click and like sign a transaction?
It's kind of more of a push in batches. I also don't want to speak for my CTO about this since I know he's publishing it next week.
Sure, but that's perfectly fair. Yeah, I gotta ask though.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So I would say if you guys have more detailed questions about this, wait till that post comes out. Keep an eye out on it. We'll retweet on the Bebot's account, and then go ahead and comment on it, and he'll answer you guys directly.
Cool. Sounds good. I know it's like, again, super like very specific question, but some of those very fine points end up mattering a lot to people in different positions and stuff. So important to have as much data as possible.
Absolutely.
Well, sweet, man. Yeah. Appreciate you taking the time again. This was an excellent run through. Appreciate all the screen shares and slides and stuff too. Sounds like you guys have pretty fresh and exciting take on sort of CCO and public domain, how to shape that and empower this whole group of people that want to create that no one would ever take a chance on them, right? So that's pretty exciting, man. I like your vision. I like what you're working on, and thanks again for coming through. Is there any sort of last final thing, like the last thing that you want people to walk away with in their mind before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd say the last thing is, between the founders not taking much money off the table, this is a high conviction bet. We're not really focusing as much on trying to make as much money as quickly as possible, or is this being income? It's more about non-dilutive funding to find a really great IP. We think the perfect holders here are people who have conviction behind what we're doing and are looking at holding it for a while.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, awesome, man. Yeah, I guess we can go ahead and stop it here. Thanks again for your time, man. That was awesome. Great job.
Cool. Yeah, appreciate it. Actually, one last thing is I've got a series of AMAs, but I'm doing one last one tonight. I think it's at 7 p.m. in the Bebot's server. So if you guys come up with any additional questions that you want to ask me, feel free to pop in later tonight, and I'll be happy to answer it there.
Sounds perfect, man. Yeah, I might pop in there myself and see what you got to say.
Cool. Appreciate it, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Have a fantastic night. And thanks for everyone listening. See you guys back in VC.